So thank you very much for joining us as always. We've got Simon and Sarah on the call. If you could do the usual and raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, that would be great. Sarah. Sarah, we can't hear you.
You're
Sorry.
on mute. Right.
Can you hear me now? Great. Yeah. If Sarah and Simon would allow us, it didn't feel right this morning just to go straight into business after events of the last few days. So if it's okay, Sarah, would you mind us just asking you just how the players have reacted to the news of the death of the Queen and any reflections you've all had in the past few days?
Yeah, I think much like the whole nation and probably around the world, it was a deeply moving day when we learned of the news that the Queen had sadly passed away. She's been such a mainstay within the whole of the squad. She's been an inspirational leader, and a female leader at that there's not many around the world, and she's given her life to sort of head this country. And I think every time we pull on an England shirt and stand and sing the national anthem, it's always been for the Queen, and it was very noticeable coming into camp the following day that there was definitely a somber note about it, and the fact that actually a big loss happened. And whilst we're not her direct family, that the team was still grieving for a woman who's done so much for this country, who's sadly no longer here. So very much hoping that what we can do over the next few days is to pay tribute to a woman who loved her sport, and I think the timing of the fact that it's us versus Wales as well is a significant moment. So hopefully we'll be able to pay our respects in the utmost way for someone who's done so much for this country. But yeah, we were certainly grieving for her and her family, and we want to pay respects to them and the future King Charles III. So yeah, it's been a pretty somber sort of few days, as it has been around the country and around the world.
And Simon, if you would allow us, we understand you got your MBE from the now King Charles. Could you just tell us a little bit about that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite surreal even thinking about it now. We just obviously got the event was delayed because of COVID, but once they got the events up and running again, we my wife Janet went to the palace. Went to Windsor Castle and just had this amazing day. And I was just really fortunate, in that it was King Charles who presented me with it. And I was just the thing that struck me about it was just how much everybody at Windsor Castle, and particularly King Charles himself, just really enjoyed the event and were so pleased for everybody who were getting their awards. It was incredible, because you think of an occasion like that is so grand. They made it feel so normal, and you could just tell how much they were enjoying being able to get the actual awards going again and meet people again. And that's what the royal family have always been about, and it's about the people. And it was incredible. I was hugely privileged.
Are you able to tell us what your conversation was with King Charles?
He just they announce who you are and what your services are, and obviously he does. It was from all walks of life that he's meeting people, and his depth of knowledge was fantastic. And he just asked how the team were going, and if our preparations were, what competitions we were involved in at the time. And I told him about the Six Nations, and told him about the World Cup coming up, and that the players were preparing for that. And he was he asked about participation. He said, is participation growing? Is it strong? And I said, it's never been stronger. And he just had a real good interest, and it was fantastic. I think that's what he said anyway. I was a little bit like.
Well, I appreciate with COVID and distance, sometimes you can't always hear brilliantly, Simon. So I'm glad you can remember most of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing those with us. I will get on to more business matters now, if that's okay. First of all, Simon, could you give us an injury update ahead of Wales, please?
Yeah, we're in good shape. We've got everybody available as things stand at the moment, and all the players who have now been released from camp were released fit and healthy. So, across the squad, we're looking really strong. Abby Dow continues to make really good progress. She's been involved in a lot of the training this week. So, we're just finalising parts of her training program so we can get a real good look at her before we make a decision. But everything's on track. So we couldn't be happier at the moment.
It seems an odd question to start with someone who isn't there, but we were told that Laura Keats was brought back into the squad and then she's been let go again. Can you explain what her situation is?
Yeah, no, she's not actually been let go again. She's still with us. She's 24th player. We keep 24th and 25th, and we've kept Laura. We looked at the front row situation, and we're very healthy again in that situation. But we're talking about the biggest of events, and what we want is to make sure we've got all the people that we feel are right, and we still feel Laura could be one of those players with her experience of World Cups, but also because she's an outstanding tight head. She fits the bill in terms of how we play, but also she's a fantastic character and a really good squad player. When you look at the depth of your squad, there's going to be certain roles that you want people to play and be prepared to play with such a big squad. And I just know that with Laura, you will get everything you need when you need it. So we've had her in for most of the summer with us, and I just wanted to come in again this week. I think we know everything we want to know about Bryony, and I wanted one last look at Laura. So we fetched her in, and I wanted to keep her in the squad because I wanted to bring her up to speed with Red Rose match day. So she'll stay with us, so that if we do make a choice and it's Laura, she's not coming in a match day cold. She understands the process has probably changed a little bit since she played last, which I think was a couple of years ago, because obviously she came back in a couple of years ago. So that was it. It was just bringing in a very good player up to speed with where we are in terms of our match day protocols, and also getting eyes on her through the week again. So that's pretty much as simple as it is.
Could we also just touch on your scrum half situation? Lucy Packer gets her opportunity at 9. Claudia McDonald is listed as number 21. Can you just confirm to us how many scrum halves you want to take with you to New Zealand, and how many of those scrum halves will be looked at as a hybrid?
One will be looked at as a hybrid, which is Claudia. So she'll play scrum half this week, and we'll take 3. Or two including a hybrid. Well, one of the 9s won't go.
Okay, all right then. And how close are you to making that decision?
We'll be a lot closer after Wednesday, I would imagine. It's probably one of the 2/3 toughest calls for quite obvious reasons. We've got great quality in all the players and different attributes. So I think the key will be the balance. That literally could be the difference between who we take and who we don't, because we've got players who can do different things in the game, are very different, and then we've got some who sort of cut across both skill sets of the players. So it'll be really tight, but we're close, but we're going to wait till Wednesday's get over.
If scrum half is one of your toughest calls, which are the other 2 positions which are causing you sleepless nights?
I think, 12 is going to be a big call. We got Tyann Hurst done outstandingly well, and we know what quality Amber Reid brings. We've also got Helena Rowland, who could play 12 and has played 12 quite a bit for us. Obviously, she's going to be playing there this weekend. So that's a big call. There's a couple of back row positions that we've still got people in the mix for. I could go right across the squad, to be absolutely honest, but you look at some of the personnel we've got, and in some of the key positions where you probably know you're going to have to release a really good player, and scrum half 12. But again, we do still have to sit down and finalise a couple of things, which is, do we go 19-13 split? Do we go 18-14 split? Do we take an extra player who we feel could cut across positions, who maybe hasn't done it before? I don't think we're going to need to do that. So there's still there's a lot to still discuss and finalise. Obviously, we discuss it every day, believe me, every day. But there's a lot of moving parts that we want to make sure we get right. It's not just about the player.
And before I move on to Sarah, Simon, the Red Roses could become the first Test team ever to win 25 matches in a row on Wednesday. What does that mean about this side, and what that kind of marker that will lay down ahead of the World Cup?
Well, I think, for us, it's obviously, it's hugely important, and I've talked about this before, and I make no apologies for saying, we're a team who we want to be remembered, and to do that you have to make history, you have to do special things, and that's where this squad's at the moment. And we went out as a staff group last night, and we were sat around and we were having a meal as a staff group, and I was talking to Kate, the physio, and I was saying to her, what's happening at this moment with this group is pretty extraordinary. The group of players and the group of staff, I'll be absolutely honest, the synergy amongst the group is absolutely fantastic, and it's hugely competitive. So it's a very difficult squad to get into, and that's why we've been as successful as we have been. So it's to win 25 on the trot will be absolutely fantastic. But the key bit for us is that we get the performance right on Wednesday, because we know there's a bigger picture that we're working towards. And if we get that right, and everybody does the job and everybody stays on task, which is one of the things that we talk about all the time, then hopefully the results will follow. And if that continues to make more history, then fantastic.
Sarah, if I could just ask you a similar question to what I've just asked Simon there. 25 Test wins in a row has never been done by any other Test nation, male or female. What would that mean to England if you get that landmark?
It's huge. I think like Simon spoke last season, sort of the autumns, about sort of these landmarks, just to make us aware about what this team was starting to achieve, and while it's in the background of knowing those milestones and recognizing them, like Simon's like bang on with the fact it is about performance, and hopefully by living up to the performance that we want to achieve week on week, like it helps to get these sort of records. Like they're not the be all and end all, but there's something pretty special about this team, and to, like Simon says, to be remembered, you have to be part of history. And like we're doing that in one part with the record side of the games and stuff, but for us the ultimate will be if we can go down to New Zealand and we can get that World Cup trophy, and then I think it will make all the records even more special. And I think at times it's hard as a player when you're living in the moment to reflect on what you're achieving. I think once the dust has settled over the next few months, or even later on in a few years, you'll look back and probably appreciate all these records and history making a little bit more when it's not the ultimate focus. Our ultimate focus is how good we can be, how we can keep improving our performance. So yeah, once we've taken stock, and it will take another very special team to be able to get back to back victories for that length of time, but like the synergy in the squad is, like Simon said, is amazing, and we share in those moments, and we make sure that they are recognized, and that we do take time to say, like, look, this is where we are, but we also don't like get self overhyped by them and think we're the greatest team ever, because like we don't want to be defined by this. We want to be defined by winning trophies, and there's a pretty big trophy to go down and try and win, and what I think will be the most competitive World Cup that there has ever been. You look around at all the warm-up games going on, all the length of time teams have had, like going across the other side of the world, where it is not going to be easy. So, you know, if we can go and be part of history that way, like that will be even more significant.
Just a couple more from me, Sarah, before I let someone else jump in. Just how are you helping support the squad at the moment, knowing that selection is so close and ultimately that not everyone can go to New Zealand and make history or have the opportunity to?
Yeah, it's a really difficult time. Like obviously at the start of pre-season, selection and the World Cup seems so far away, but obviously as we edge closer to it, it's very much on everyone's mind, like mine included. Like, you know, to be in this team, you have to be performing. Like you've heard some of the selection headaches that Simon's going to have across the squad. Like we're now 2, 3, 4 deep in some positions, which means that if you're not playing your best, like you won't go, and you can't take that for granted. So every opportunity you've got to come out and train, you've got to show like, pick me, I want a seat on that plane. I think it's just trying to be there for everyone, and to try and ensure that whilst it's easier said than done, to try and not think about it too much, but to try and re-emphasize to them just to be the player that they're here for. You know, just go out and be the best version of you, do what you've been asked to do for the player that you are, and try and do that as much as you can, as often as you can, in order to put your best foot forward. Like if you know as a player you've done that and you haven't been selected, I think you then can go, well, I've done everything I can. It's like not the right combination, or someone's better than me. And then, I mean, you're still absolutely devastated you haven't made it, but at least you know that you couldn't have done any more. And I think that's what sort of as a leadership group we're trying to do to the squad. We're like trying to make it probably as relaxed as we can, trying to make people feel as comfortable as they can, you know, while still trying to keep it as tight as we can, because the side is whichever going to go is going to have to be tight, and selections will happen out there. So yeah, just try and as much as you can to normalize it as much as possible, even though it's got the biggest outcome lying in it come when that selection comes through.
Just lastly from me, Sarah, there was a story in the Telegraph by Fiona last week about the England match fee being halved for these 2 World Cup warm-ups. There's no form of precedent for this. It's the first time we've seen it happen to the male or the female players. Can you talk us through why the England women agreed to it and what the discussions have been since? So the discussions were like months ago as part of our contract. We agreed to it. We signed our contract months ago, so that we wouldn't have to have conversations around match fees or contractual agreements on what we were on. It was all done and dusted, so actually our focus could be purely around World Cup prep, warm-up game prep, going out to it. So as far as we're concerned, that's done, that's done and dusted, and like we just want to focus on the game on Wednesday, and then whatever team gets out to the World Cup to focus on that, not what their match fees are or what they could be or what they should be. You know, like it's sorted in from a player's point of view. Our focus is purely on our next game. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions? Eleanor.
Sorry, I need to move my pin and unmute. I wanted to ask Simon, if that's okay. What is it that you want to see against Wales that you didn't see against the USA? What is it that you're particularly looking for on Wednesday?
Probably to get our super strengths back on the field, because the USA game was. I really enjoyed the USA game. I really enjoyed reviewing it because there was elements of it that were exactly what we trained to do, and what you're always looking for is to transfer the things that you train into the game. And we've done a couple of things that we'd worked on and we evidenced them really well in the game. But at the same time, our line out and our kicking game was pretty average, which is, you know, is a real super strength of ours, both those. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we get those two back on track. And the kicking game was a little bit mixed, but you know, there were some specific reasons why it didn't go like we expect it to go, and we've talked about them. So we want to see our kicking game. We want to see our line out drive and our line out defence step up. But then we want to see an improvement again in the things that we did well, that we brought to the game. So there's some of the technical bits, the bits around the game. What we want to see as an overall is unbelievable intensity and physicality. You know, we have trained very hard for this game. we train hard for every game. But if you at yesterday's session, that was something to behold. For obvious reasons, there was a selection that had been done. There were players who were still trying to get themselves on the plane, and there are players who are just generally incredibly competitive. And we had a fantastic training session after not such a good training session the day before. It was okay the day before, but now that's another beauty of this squad. They don't back up poor sessions because they sit down and they go, that wasn't good enough. So tomorrow we're going to be better. And this is what, and yesterday's session was great. And a lot of it revolved around physicality and intensity. And that's what we want to bring. Because if you bring that and you get that right, particularly against teams like the Welsh, who will be absolutely full of it, then you can play the game you want because you can create momentum and create front foot. And if you do that, the game becomes a lot easier to either kick or to run.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Eleanor. Fiona.
Thanks, Emily. Morning, guys. Mids, if I can come to you first. We've talked a lot about 9, but I just wanted to touch on 10. God forbid if something happened to Zoe Harrison out in New Zealand. Are you kind of seeing Holly Aitchison or Helena as a sort of hybrid 10 who could slot into that role?
Helena will step in first. Helena could play 10 anyway if he's always not training or playing well enough. So she's a 100% chance that she could play 10 in the World Cup. And then Holly would be the next one if Holly's selected, because again, there's still debate over that. Amber Reid can play 10. So again, these are the little bits that we're talking about when Sarah asked about the sort of idiosyncrasies of the selection piece. But as things stand, our 2 10s are Zoe and Eleanor, with Holly again, if selected, the third choice. And it was fantastic that she had such exposure for Sarah's at the end of the season in such big games. You know, it was really unfortunate for Zoe because you want your players to be able to play in the biggest of games, and they were big games. But from our point of view, it was like this is great for us because this is great exposure for Holly. So we're as we learned in 2017, you know, you need depth in that position, and you know, we've got that. So we're really happy with that situation.
And am I right in thinking that all of those girls are right-footed kickers? None of them are left-footed?
Yeah.
Is Amber right-footed as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that, I mean, that's just purely an observation. Is that something that kind of you've been acutely aware of? Is it something you're concerned about?
Yeah, no, it makes kicking from right to left. You have to be a bit more tactically savvy. So if you think about our game against France, when I think it was Jacquet played fullback, and she marked the right side of our field, obviously the left side of their backfield. She marked it really well, and negated our kicking game for the first 15 minutes. But then the girls worked it out. We did a little bit of a shift, set up so we could kick down the left side of the field, and that just comes down to, you know, good game management and understanding what your strengths are. I think kicking from right to left for a right-footed kicker is a much more difficult kick, but we've ways around it. So you know, would we love one of them to be a left footer? Yeah, it'd be good if they could kick off both feet, which I'm pretty sure Skaz will be out there if he has to. So
yeah, I don't doubt Skaz could. And not to kind of get ahead of ourselves at all, but after the Wales game, how are you planning on delivering the all-important news to the players, Simon? Will it be kind of in person, an email, phone call, or have you not decided that yet?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing will be we'll sit down and finalise the squad as a coaching group, and then we've asked all the players how they want the news, and we've got every player's give an individual sort of feedback about how they would want it, and we're going to work on that basis. Some will be a conversation first, some just want the news in a message. Some are quite happy to just wait till the squad is announced. We've cleared the decks the day after for conversations, so yeah, it's very personal and individual to that player, and we want to respect that, and so it'll vary.
And Sarah, if I could just come to you, I don't know whether you can talk us through any of the formalities that might have already been decided ahead of the game on Wednesday with respect to honouring the Queen, talking things like black armbands, or I presume there's going to be the anthem and a minute's silence. I don't know whether you can talk a bit about that at all.
There certainly is going to be something to mark the occasion. I think the RFU and the venue are still finalising the exact details of what that is, but no doubt there'll be armbands, there'll be a minute of silence, that sort of thing. But I think they're still waiting to finalise what exactly the detail is. But yeah, it's a moment for both teams to come together, for the crowd, for everyone watching, just to take a moment and remember the Queen and what she's done for this country. So yeah, there certainly will be something that is appropriate for the occasion.
Nice. And just lastly, if I may, I appreciate you just said there, Sarah, that you're focused with the rest of the team, obviously on New Zealand and the World Cup, and you touched on it earlier that you're so like living in this moment at the minute. Just not to kind of drag you over uncomfortable ground even more, but with just regards to the match fees, the FA have been paying their men's and women's players equally for the past 2 years. I just wondered what your thoughts are on whether it's perhaps time post World Cup, perhaps if the RFU maybe followed suit. And we're not talking big money either at the FA, £2,000 a player for men and women. So just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, not to sound like a stuck record, I'm sure those conversations will happen. Obviously new contracts happen, and like you just got to look at what the RFU has done for the investment of the women's game. It is more than anyone else in the world on and off the pitch, and I'm sure they'll be looking at like the revenue we bring in, the revenue the men bring in, how they want to keep increasing that support for the women's game. They've announced what £200 million towards the domestic game. So we're not talking about the RFU not investing. So I'm sure those negotiations will be done on match fees with the RFU, with the players, with our RPA rep, and with the RPA to come to some agreement that everyone is happy with that, and that will be in the next contract that will be in. I'm sure those discussions will take place then. Like I said, we're purely here now to focus on our matches on Wednesday and going into the World Cup. Like our contracts are done. They've been done for months. We're just here to play rugby, and those conversations will be taken up in the next contractual talks.
Cool. Cheers, Sarah. Good luck on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fee. Any further questions for Simon or Sarah? No, all good. Well, thank you as always for joining us. I'll send the recordings round shortly, and we'll see some of you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.